Hello everyone, this is Chris Crazy House, and as promised, this is going to be part one in my series about the conspiracies and mysteries that we see portrayed in the Netflix series Stranger Things. For some of us, we may have just watched this show and it was a very amazing show, and it might even seem very new and fresh to a lot of people, but a lot of the themes and the conspiracy theories that the show draws from have been tread upon before in film, TV, and other parts of pop culture. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about those things and maybe give you guys a hint as to where these conspiracies and mysteries come from, and maybe where you can go look up more information about it by typing it into a YouTube or a Google search engine. I'm starting off with the most easy conspiracy theory that was put into the show, because they actually name it exactly. It was the Mkultra Experiments. Now, in the show Stranger Things, I believe it's called the Hawkins Institute. They were behind Mkultra years ago, and they experimented by giving young people different types of psychoactive drugs like LSD and other things, and seeing if it awakened any latent psychic abilities in these people. And inadvertently, they gave it to a young woman who was pregnant at the time, and she wound up giving birth to a young girl who was dubbed the character 11 in the series Stranger Things. And if you watched it, you know that 11 does possess psychic powers, like telekinesis. She also has some empathic abilities where she can feel different types of emotions, and she also has the ability to break through into different dimensions and different realms. So first of all, let's just talk about Mkultra. Now, there are several conspiracies swirling around the idea of Mkultra. I was kind of interested that the show even took that name, because they kind of misused it in what Mkultra really is, or what it really, the real conspiracy behind Mkultra, and that was just mostly Mkultra is talking about mind control, and maybe there are different facets of Mkultra that even I don't know about. Maybe there was some experiments on trying to turn people into psychic warriors or whatever, but from the studies that I've done on Mkultra, it mostly has to do with mind control. And you see this pop up especially with the assassination of Robert Kennedy, and he was assassinated by a man named Sirhan. And apparently the conspiracy theory is that Sirhan was a mind-controlled assassin, that he had been given all these different suggestions and given drugs and made to kill the presidential hopeful, Robert Kennedy. And it's one of those things that circulated around. There's also been theories that a lot of soldiers during the Korean War, when they were captured by the Koreans, that they were also given mind-altering drugs and had their minds brainwashed, essentially. This was famously showed in the movie The Manchurian Candidate. There's the original version, and then there's a newer version that came out years later with Denzel Washington playing the guy that was there to stop the Manchurian Candidate from killing the president. So that's, and also another conspiracy is that the people involved in the Jonestown massacre, where the cult leader Jim Jones gave those people cyanide laced Kool-Aid and they all drank it and died, that was also believed to be part of Mkultra, because there's a lot of conspiracies out there that say that Jim Jones himself was an actual CIA agent, and that he was sent down there to do something, specifically do some sort of mind-altering experiments. And to keep it all covered up, he kind of put it under the umbrella of a religious cult, and then wound up killing all those people in that camp. So the show Stranger Things kind of diverges from this, and they kind of just look at it as MK Ultra just dealing with the mind. But as I said, this is not the first time we've seen this type of government experimenting on people and giving them psychic powers or awakening psychic powers in them, like we've seen in the character 11 in Stranger Things. Some of the bigger films that talked about this back during the 70s, because apparently this was a very big subject matter in the 70s and early 80s. But two of the big ones are the movie Carrie, which was a book written by Stephen King and was later turned into a film by Brian De Palma. It's about a young girl named Carrie who just all of a sudden wakes up one day going through puberty and figures out that she also has psychic abilities, the ability of telekinesis, where she can move things with her mind. And of course it takes on the more high school angst and dealing with bullies, and Carrie essentially deals with them in her own way by killing all of them by the end. This is also seen in David Cronenberg's Scanners. Now this story is very similar to Stranger Things, where a lot of women were given a certain type of drug. I can't remember what the name of the drug was in the movie, but they were given a certain drug during pregnancy by a corporation, and then all of a sudden it turns out that all the children that they were giving birth to would come out with these psychic abilities, and they were called scanners because they could actually scan your mind. And of course the government is looking for these scanners, and this movie has probably one of the most visceral scenes ever put on film, in which a scanner invades someone's mind and causes their head to explode. It's a very classic scene in movie and horror history, but something that, you know, the rest of the movie was not as interesting as that one scene and just the idea behind it, but it brought forth a lot of ideas and a lot of conspiracies of people thinking that this is something that actually does go on behind the scenes. Another good film that a lot of people do not really talk about or really know about that much, because I've never heard of it until I saw it myself, was The Fury. And this is a really good movie that does focus on the government actually looking for people who have psychic abilities, and they find a young man who, his father is a government agent, and they wind up kidnapping the boy from his father and putting him into this hidden hospital to try to wake up his psychic abilities and use him to work for the government as an assassin. And the young boy's father winds up going out and finding a young girl who also has psychic abilities. She's a teenage girl, and through her, he's using her to help find his kidnapped son. But this also has a lot of great moments of using not just telekinetics but telepathy, and culminates in the young girl actually using her powers to completely obliterate this government agent who is trying to use her as his new puppet. And when I say obliterate, she actually caused him to explode by the end of the film. And another great film during this time period, also very similar to the story in Stranger Things, is the movie Firestarter. Now this one's a little bit different because it takes place with two young people. They are experimented on by the government as well, given certain types of powers they can communicate to each other through their minds, and they wind up giving birth to a child who is immensely powerful and is actually pyro-kinetic, to where she can actually start fires with her mind. And this is something a little bit different that a lot of people have never seen before. At least I'd never seen it before until I saw the film. It's actually one of my favorite films from childhood. But the character can actually cause fires to go with her mind and create explosions, cause the room to heat up. And this is something very interesting that you see with the next generation of people who get psychic powers. And of course, the most famous, in my opinion, the most famous version of this is the animated classic movie Akira. In Akira, you have young children. It's always children. I always find that very interesting. It's always children who get these psychic abilities, or teenagers when they reach the age of puberty. But it's usually children. But in Akira, these young kids get these psychic abilities from the government, and one who is named Akira actually causes the destruction of Tokyo. And then years later, we see one of these kids who has these psychic abilities tries to escape and is hit by the member of a young biker gang. And in doing so and having that contact with this psychic kid, this biker named Tetsuo also winds up getting latent psychic abilities. And of course the government tries to experiment on him, but he winds up escaping and actually starting a whole entirely new revolution in Neo Tokyo. Of course, Akira is an animation classic, and even if you look at some of those kids and the way that they're dressed and look at the character of 11, they look very similar when you put them side by side. So you can see that the directors and the artists behind the show Stranger Things did take a lot from a lot of these old shows and also the animated movie Akira. So that's what I just wanted to start out with the MK Ultra and the government using psychoactive drugs and experimenting on people's minds and giving them these psychic abilities. That's the first conspiracy and mystery. If you want to look up more about MK Ultra, just go ahead and type it into any search engine. I'm sure you'll travel right down the YouTube or Google rabbit hole, and you'll find actual facts of, because this is an actual government file and experiment class that actually did exist. It might not have been as extensive as we know it, but as it always goes with mysteries and conspiracies, I always say, who knows? None of it may be true. Maybe only a part of it is true. I tend to think some of it is half and half true, but some of it might all be true. We never know, because I do feel that a lot of Hollywood scripts, whether it be movies or things that make it to TV or even in animation, that they are speaking to us and kind of opening the lid on certain ideas that actually do exist out there. Anyway, I will be back with part 2 and part 3 of my little series talking about the mysteries and conspiracies in Stranger Things. And if you want to add more to this conversation, please feel free to either do a video response, or you can just leave a comment in the comment section and discuss these things amongst yourselves. Anyway, Chris Crazy House signing out. Peace.